I have a client who protected her trademark and got a trademark registration through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. She sent cease and desist letters. When it came time for her to sell her business and somebody approached her and she got an offer, she ended up selling her business for 900% more than the initial offer. And because the value was noted relative to the intellectual property.
It's The Journey with drug and alcohol attorney Mark G. Astor.
Welcome to The Journey with Mark Astor. I'm your host, Mark Astor. I've spent a lot of years sitting across the table from people during some of the most challenging moments of their lives as an attorney, as an advocate, and as someone who understands that the road isn't always straight. What I've learned is that success, recovery, and growth rarely look the way we expect them to. There are detours, hard conversations, and moments that change everything. On this podcast, I talk to people who are willing to be honest about their journey, what worked, what didn't, and what they wish they knew sooner. Today, I'm very excited because I have my good friend, L.A. Perkins. How are you, L.A.?
Great, Mark. Thank you for having me.
L.A. and I have known each other for a long time, and I was flattered that she wanted to come on my podcast because we've just relaunched, and she's a special lady. L.A. is a former president of the South Palm Beach County Bar Association, has more than 30 years of experience. God, that makes us old, doesn't it? LA focuses her practice on counseling, litigation, and mediation in the area of intellectual property law. She's a brand protection attorney strategist who is passionate about helping business owners identify, protect, and enforce their intellectual property rights so they can increase the value of their business and avoid costly mistakes. LA has represented clients in a broad range of matters, including but not limited to trademark registrations, copyright registrations, trademark infringement, copyright infringement, patent infringement, trade secret counseling disputes, unfair competition, computer fraud, promotion and marketing disputes, and employment matters. She's represented individuals up until also including Fortune 100 companies. She's litigated, in addition to litigating cases in Florida, LA has litigated cases in California, Colorado, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, New York, and Wisconsin. Wow. In 2021, and every year since then, LA was recognized by super lawyers as a super lawyer in the area of intellectual property litigation. She also serves as the past president of the South Palm Beach County Bar Association and served for more than 12 years on the board of directors of the South Palm Beach County Bar Association. In 2018, LA received the President's Award from the president of the South Palm Beach County Bar Association for her ongoing dedication and commitment to the Bar Association. She's also received, and this is pretty rare, an AV preeminent rating from Martindale-Hubbell Law Directory. It indicates the highest level of skill, integrity, and professional conduct, and it's only awarded to 8% of all United States attorneys. Wow, that's pretty impressive, LA. I didn't know all that about you.
Thank you, Mark.
I've got some catching up to do. But maybe we can go back to the beginning because my recollection is that you did not grow up in the U.S. Am I right about that?
I was born in South Africa, and I moved to the United States with my parents and my brother when I was 7 years old.
Okay, so you came way before me, and somehow I've also lost my accent because you don't sound.
Oh, you've got yours.
A little bit. I always tell people it's like my hair. It's there, but it's definitely going.
I intentionally lost mine because when you're 7, you want to sound like all the other kids and not be different. So it was intentional.
Yeah. So maybe we could start at the beginning. Talk about what does an intellectual property lawyer do? Because I'm sure people don't know. So maybe talk about that just to start with.
Intellectual property covers 4 areas. It's patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. And so those are intangible assets of a business that are very important. Very high level, a patent is a novel invention. A trademark is a source identifier for a business, and it's often a logo, a unique name, a tagline. Copyright is something that is created, that's original, often in the literary arena, but could take a lot of different forms as well. And trade secrets, a really great example for trade secrets is like the Coca-Cola formula. If you've ever been to Atlanta, there's a big vault where they have the Coca-Cola formula. And the idea is with the trade secrets, you have to make sure that people only know the information on a need to know basis and there are agreements in place.
So if I've got a business, let's say I've invented something, what is the reason to protect it?
Gosh, if you've invented something, then you want to be the only one that can use that for a certain period of time and have exclusivity in the market relating to it. There's financial benefit to having a patent and stopping others. So if somebody wanted that, whatever that invention is, they would have to buy it through you.
So I know you did some intellectual property work for us, and I think we protected the logo, and we also protected some language on the front of our website, which says "We Save Families." I was concerned because there was another law firm out there who appeared to be stealing stuff off the website and basically copying what we were doing, and I wanted to protect, for lack of a better word, the sweat equity that me and my wife have put into this firm for the last 10 years, so that people didn't come along and steal it.
So, what you're talking about, Mark, and that's very important. That's different than an invention. In the context that you just mentioned, we're talking about trademark protection. And the gold standard is getting a federal registration through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And that means that you are the only company that's providing those types of goods or services that could use, the logo or the slogan relating to those services. Big picture, it's really important to protect it because then you're able to stop others. And part of the process that we often go through before a company protects it is doing what's called a comprehensive trademark search, which is an important aspect to do because it lets companies know if there's the same or similar mark that's already registered or in use out there where they could be accused of trademark infringement. A company that's worked so hard to build what it's built could actually have all of the profits disgorged, meaning they have to turn over all of their profits to the entity that actually had the registered name.
So let's say that the other law firm that appears to be copying us went ahead and they took the language from our website, which says "We Save Families," and put it on their website. How do I address that? Because obviously that's part of our mission statements right there on the front page of the website. We save families, which is what we do, which is a bit of a different message than I represent clients. I'm an attorney.
You're in the best position once you have a registered trademark. And at that point, you have the ability at any time. It's just a different strength in the ability is to send what's called a cease and desist letter to someone that is using the same name or slogan. And it would say something like, I have rights to this. I've been using for a long time. Notice that you're new on the scene and you're using the same slogan, for example, and it's creating confusion with my brand. And I need you to stop. And that starts the conversation, right? And oftentimes we're able to work things out in various ways. And worst case scenario, you end up litigating the situation.
So in theory, if they decided to use that protected language, I could sue them and potentially get damages because it affects my business, because now potentially they're representing themselves or to clients as if they're us.
Yes, if they're in the same type of space as you, Mark, and they're doing the same type of legal services, yes, the answer is because the argument would be they are diverting traffic away from your website, your business, to them riding on your coattails.
So if somebody came along and decided they wanted to buy the law firm, I'm sitting here looking up at the sky right now, hoping that happens. Is there some value to obviously having the logo and the language on the front page of the website protected?
That is a great question, Mark. And yes, the short answer, the big answer is absolutely yes, there's an advantage. I love to share the example. I have a client who protected her trademark and got a trademark registration through the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and then policed her mark, made sure that anyone that was using anything similar or that could be confused, she stopped. She sent cease and desist letters. When it came time for her to sell her business and somebody approached her and she got an offer, she called me and she said, "This is what's going on." And I said, "Do they know everything that you've done to protect your intellectual property?" And she said, "No." Anyway, we had a conversation. She ended up selling her business for 900% more than the initial offer. And because the value was noted relative to the intellectual property.
Wow, so it does make a big difference.
It does. I can't certainly guarantee 900% more, but yes, because intellectual property is actually, it's an asset that could go on financial statements and be valued.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit in time, and I'd like to know, like, what made you decide to go to law school?
I took a class when I was in high school. It was called Street Law, and I loved that class. And the teacher who taught it decided that she was going to set up a mock trial team that would compete locally with the other high schools. And I auditioned or tried out for the mock trial team, and I was one of the people chosen. We ended up winning for our area. We then won for the state of Florida, and we then went to Washington, D.C. to represent the state of Florida nationally. And that experience just nailed in for me that I really wanted to go to law school. So I knew I was in my junior year of high school, and I knew that's where I was going.
What kind of work did your parents do?
My dad was an entrepreneur, and when we came from South Africa, he started a business, and his business was Italian tiles and carpeting was his business here in the United States. And my mom helped him with marketing. And certainly I learned a lot. I was very observant. I loved going to my dad's office on the weekend and listening to how he would pitch and sell, and always been very curious. My entrepreneurial journey, Mark, started when I was a teenager, and I was listening a lot earlier than that.
I think that's so interesting that you share that because my dad was an entrepreneur too. My dad left school at 14 and my mother 16. They were not educated people. And my father was in retail electronics when I was a kid growing up. As far back as I can remember, I always went to work with my dad, and my dad was insisted that school's out, you get a job, right? You're not, the weekend's coming along, you better have a Saturday job. And I didn't realize how much I'd learned from him watching him in business over the years until he was gone. And there were times where I want to tap into his knowledge base, and I remember, oh yeah, I remember him telling me about that. So I think that's so interesting that we shared a similar sort of path in that way.
And my dad also didn't finish high school. 16, he started his business.
So my parents met on a blind date, and my father and mother joked. My mother knew she was getting set up with my dad, and she went dressed in her Sunday best to a friend's house. And my father looked at her and said, "She must be come from a stinking rich family." And my father had been tinkering with his car, and he was in his overalls, and he was like covered in grease. And my mother looked at him and said, "If he cares that little to come dressed for a blind date, he must come from a stinking rich family." And the irony was, they didn't have two nickels to rub together between the two of them. They had nothing. My grandfather on my father's side was a tailor, and my mother's father was a barber, and they didn't come from money.
Life in South Africa was very different. My parents gave all of that up to come to, I guess, what we call the land of opportunity. And so it was a big shell shock to come from life in South Africa to the United States.
Do you think especially your dad, was passionate about the American dream? Did he believe in all that stuff?
Oh, 100%, 100%. We came to the United States for the American dream. True, the epitome of that.
Yeah, my dad was very much the same, and everything my father ever had, he had because he worked hard and he built businesses. Some worked, some didn't, some made money, and especially towards the end of his life, they didn't make money. He lost money, so I watched the ups and downs. But my dad, pretty like your dad, was a big believer in the American dream, and what I mean by that is his philosophy was if you work really hard, you can get rewarded for that. But if you're going to sit on your ass and complain about your shitty life, then that's where you're going to stay. It's not up to anybody else to save you. It's up to you. And that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't take care of people who are not able to, obviously, that can't function and work. We should, especially our veterans. But he was a big believer in working hard and taking care of your family. And that's what he said to me. That's what a man does. He gets up every day, goes to work, helps people, puts food on the table for his family, and pays his taxes. That's what you should be doing. And I always remembered that. And I've carried that philosophy into building the law firm. So I'm glad that we share that. And it's funny because we've known each other those years and I did not know that about you.
We share that in common. Those ideals and those values were ingrained in me certainly early on, and just by observing.
I know that you're an entrepreneurial lawyer, right? So a bit like me, you had a bit of a journey to get to your own law firm. So maybe share a little bit about that if you would.
I've always been entrepreneurial, had an entrepreneurial mindset, and it was just a matter of like when was the right time. Early on in my practice, I wanted the experience to get the necessary experience. So I guess I had the confidence to have my own firm. And it was just a matter of like when was the time going to be right. And my firm I started in 2012, and it was really after being a partner in two different law firms. So I got some big law experience and got some really great training. And so the time was right for me. And it's interesting, my grandmother had passed away, and she left me, I think it was like $30,000. As a grandchild, I got $30,000. And I thought,
That sounds like that was a lot of money, I bet, back then. You thought you won the lottery.
I didn't think I won the lottery, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to use this money to invest in myself, and I'm going to set up a business. And that's exactly what I did.
I love that. That is a great story. Yeah, I know back in 2004, after I'd gone through a divorce, and one of the things I really wanted to do was I wanted to go back to school and get a master's. And I did. I took money out of my savings and I paid for another year of school. I moved up to DC and I invested in myself because I knew it would help. I didn't realize at the time how much it would help. But I think it's important to invest in yourself.
I think it's very important and ongoingly important. That's like a value, I think, just to continue to improve. And there's always more to learn.
And evolve.
Exactly.
Let's switch gears for a second, because I know this is something I really wanted to talk to you about because of the work that we do.
Yes.
And I think I shared with you that, so 11 months into opening up the firm, which was actually February of 16, and I lost my dad, and I had 2 days after that, I had a family member that got sucked into Florida's mental health system. And I also had one of my closest friends who had a sister that disappeared for several days on a drug binge. And he had a sister-in-law. He had a brother-in-law that hung himself after being addicted to pain pills. And then he had a sister-in-law that died of an overdose. I know that you had shared a little bit about your family's journey with that. And unless you really want to talk about who that individual was, maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because I know that you have such an appreciation for what we do. And again, that's something I learned not that long ago about you.
I'm happy to talk about it. I think it's really an important topic for us to talk about. I think there's a tremendous mental health drug crisis in the United States. And yeah, that has absolutely touched my life. I've had I've had several family members, but one in particular that I'm thinking of that was very close to. This family member had a drug issue with cocaine and also had mental health issues. And I was able to get this family member help through utilizing the Marchman Act, which I know is something that's near and dear to your heart that you work on with people. And I really believe that the tough love related to using that act and saved her life. And so I'm really glad that it existed, and I'm happy to share.
I'll let you take the lead on that as to who it was and the details. But I know that also there'd been a little bit of a history of the Baker Act as well with that individual.
Yeah, that person called the authorities on herself several times, and which was actually quite courageous, and really acknowledged her for that. Addiction is a hard thing to beat. The statistics, it's just tough. And that's where she needed some extra help to be actually ended up going from the hospital where she was in a psych unit to a halfway house where she was able to engage in an outpatient treatment center. And I don't remember exactly how long she was in the halfway house, but it was, I think, 6 months to 9 months, or it was an extended period of time.
One of the things that we tell families is that the typical recovery journey is about a year, and a significant portion of that is that whole recovery, sober living experience. It's so important for somebody that's been suffering for a long time to be in an environment once they get out of treatment that is nurturing and supportive and can just where you can be around other people who are also working on their recovery. I think that is huge.
100%, Mark. And that was actually what motivated me to use the Marchman Act, because I knew if she returned to who she was living with, which was her significant other at the time, that it was very likely that she would just go back to using, and she needed to be removed from that environment, to your point, and be around people that were focused on helping themselves and moving on.
Yeah. So my understanding is that with this particular individual is that there was a suicide attempt.
Yes, there was a suicide attempt, and I actually was there at the time, and thankfully was able to intervene and called 911, and she was able to be saved. She was going to take her life with abusing pills and taking a whole bunch of pills with alcohol. And what I understand is that she was actually dead on arrival at the hospital and her stomach needed to be pumped. Yeah.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 14.
That had to be scary.
Very much. And I always have angels in my life, people that I called upon that have been there for me to support me when I needed it. And that was certainly a time that was very challenging. And I'm grateful for all the support I got to work through the trauma of that.
One of the things that I think people don't realize, especially when they know you're a lawyer, right? There's always the idea, if you're a lawyer, you're fine. You're making plenty of money and everything's okay. And I didn't know if you know this. There was a local attorney here, Stephen Graham, who was an acquaintance of mine, part of the South Palm Beach County Bar. And for folks that don't know, Steve was a really good guy, family man. And he ran the South Palm Beach County Bar, small law firm lunches and dinners. And I used to see him in the gym, actually. And I always remembered Stephen because he was always the sharpest guy, and he was always the sharpest dressed guy in the room. And his suit was never unbuttoned. He was just an immaculate looking guy. And then I found out a couple of weeks ago that he'd taken his own life. And I'm still in shock because he was such a positive energy and just a good person. And I think people don't realize that as lawyers, they say the legal profession is twice as likely to develop any kind of behavioral health issue. And because we're trained as problem solvers, we try to solve this problem ourselves. And we can't.
100%. And I think, yeah, unfortunately, we are in a profession that's got some very high risks with alcohol, mental health issues. And I want to share, I'm very passionate about this topic. And the Florida Bar has an amazing benefit, which not many people are aware of. If you're a member of the Florida Bar or a registered paralegal, you get 5 free therapy sessions a year. And there's a service that's provided by a third party. The Florida Bar never knows about it, doesn't get any information about it.
What's the name of that organization, LA?
It's called the Florida Lawyers Helpline. If anybody just Google Florida Lawyers Helpline, the page will come up. I'm actually the current chair of the Florida Bar's Mental Health and Wellness Committee. And one of our missions is really to spread the word on this wonderful benefit that is available and that it is totally confidential. We only know that the service is getting used, not who's using it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that. It's interesting. Over the years, we have put a couple of lawyers into treatment. We've also represented a number of lawyers who had family members. We recently represented a judge, not from Palm Beach County. And I've had calls from judges in other states. We had a call from the family of a federal judge. And I think people don't realize it affects our profession tremendously.
It does. In fact, we're looking at right now, there's secondary trauma issues depending on the practice area that you're in. Yeah, there's stress from the practice, but then people that are exposed a lot of times in family and personal injury to seeing some really horrific things that impacts us.
I know when I was prosecutor, especially when I was high up in the food chain and prosecuting some really serious, violent individuals, especially if it was a murder case, Yeah, it can traumatize you. There's no question about it. When you're doing that kind of work, you have to care about what you do, and it's hard not to absorb it. So I appreciate you sharing that, and you've triggered some thoughts in my mind that I'm going to share with you when we get done here, because that's become a bit of a passion of mine. And we did some work with Florida's Mutual, the insurance company that works with the Florida bar, trying to help lawyers get help. And listen, there's all doctors in my family. The medical profession also has these issues, and where there's just pressure. But you're right about the Florida bar, and I have to tip my hat to the Florida bar, because my understanding is that if you're a lawyer and you have a behavioral health issue and you go to them and ask for help, they will bend over backwards to help you. Of course, if you don't ask for help and you end up taking even a nickel out of your trust account, they're going to tell you to mail your bar card back. You're done. You're out the game for probably at least 5 years. And I've seen that happen too. So anyway, with the time we have left, because we have a few minutes, I know that you wrote a book. You're an author too. And I want to talk about that. And tell us about your book, because it's on Amazon. And my understanding is it's selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, thank you. So I did write a book. My book is Why Brand Protection Matters. And I wrote this book. It came out almost 2 years ago. And about 3 years ago, I was sitting in my office and I had just completed a call with a potential new client. And that client, I was noticing that people were making the same mistakes over and over. And I was like thinking, oh, if I could just hit replay. So that really was the foundation of what had me decide I'm going to write a book on these to help people avoid these mistakes. And that's what I embarked on. And I'm so glad that I did, because my mission is that 1 million people read the book. At least I help 1 million business owners. So that's what I'm very passionate about, is educating people so that they can be successful.
How long does it take to write a book?
Mark, I actually did it. I had met this wonderful woman, Ashley Mansour, and she was a writing coach. And I had met her many years prior. And I thought, when I'm ready, I'm going to reach out and find her. And she's out in California. And I did a writing, she was my writing coach. And she had a program. And she said, if you follow the program, you will have, in 90 days, you'll have a book. And so within 90 days, I had a rough draft of my book. And then I would say from the time that I started, writing the book through the time it was published was about a year. It goes through different editors, different types of editors, and that's a bit of a time-intensive process. But I'm so happy that I did. And as I've mentioned to you, I highly recommend anyone that has any profession that you can write a book about that relates to what you do and put it out there on the internet. It really has helped in terms of the growth of the business from a search engine optimization standpoint.
Yeah, and they can find it on Amazon. Is that right?
It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on a number of other platforms as well.
So, if nothing else, go and buy LA's book, because it's really good stuff. And I'm not just a fan, I'm also a client, just so we're clear here, right? I'm a client, and I know that you were incredibly helpful to us. Before we go, if there's anybody who wants to find out about your services, how do they find you?
The website is www.brandprotection.law, or they can call the office at 561-467-4001. There's a contact link on my website as well, so they can submit any inquiry that way.
I've got one quick question. If somebody's saying California, New York, can they still hire you to file? I'm jealous.
With regard to brand protection, I represent companies all over the country, and I even represent companies that are outside of the United States looking to do business in the United States.
So that's important. And I think that I wish I could tell you we do the same. Most of our clients are not here, but we need their loved ones here, so we have jurisdiction over them. So that is a beautiful thing. So for the folks who want to find out about what we do, because our mission is to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery, you can find us on the web. Our main website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. We're also here in South Florida, like LA, and the main number to the office is 561-419-6095. And if somehow you can't find either of those things or find the number, just Google me. I'm like LA, I'm omnipresent. I'm all over the internet. Thank you for joining me. I feel like I've learned more about you now than I have all these other years. So thank you for sharing not just your entrepreneurial journey, but that very personal story that you shared with the audience. I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. I love your mission and the work that you do, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to make a difference with families.
With that said, folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.